you know that I formulated 500 plus recipes for my first book, right? So in that small town where there were no big brands, no online shopping at the time, what I really saw was that my mom doing all those, kitchen and DIY Ayurveda hacks that, to nourish her skin. And that's how my book happened. So my small town is, indeed very small, but it taught me a hell lot of things.
The following podcast is an American Influencer Council production.
Welcome to Creators with Influence, a podcast on the intersection between the creator economy and digital culture, where entrepreneurs come to share empowered stories.
Kiana Smith-Brunito is a creator advocate, champion of lifelong learning, and movement maker.
Karsten Tanis, known as Skinny Was Here, is a solopreneur, internationally recognized multimedia creator, and a promoter of creative inclusivity.
Together, they are your hosts.
All right, Kiana, we are back with another episode of Creators with Influence, and today we have another amazing creator, this time from across the world, right? So we're tapping into the international section of the digital influencers, or digital entrepreneurs, I should say, that are also moving and shaking things up on their end. So tell us, who are we speaking with today?
We've got Nikita Upadhyay, and she's a beauty influencer, Forbes 30 Under 30, best-selling author, beauty advisor to celebrities, and a former digital head of Cosmopolitan India. And it's a website that she totally shaked upside down and all around. She grew that site from 9 million followers to over 80 million in 2 years. Extraordinarily impressive. She's collaborated with all of the top brands in our space: Bath and Body Works, The Body Shop, Mac, Amazon, just to name a few. She's a true millennial mogul, and I'm so thrilled to have her on Creators with Influence. So let's bring her in. Hi, Nikita. How are you?
Hi, Nikita.
Hi, Kiana. Hi, Karsten. Thank you for the generous words, by the way.
We only speak the truth. You have quite the impressive resume. You've done some awesome work in our space, and we're excited to hear your story and how you've been trailblazing.
Thank you, and I'm so thrilled to share it with you guys.
So, first question for you. Hopefully it's not too tough. But you were born and raised in New Delhi, but I know you are very international. How has your global point of view helped you to champion and voice for multicultural beauty inclusivity?
So actually, I was born and raised in a small town of Chhattisgarh, and I moved out and, began my life in New Delhi when I was 18. So this small town is where I learned all the, that I formulated 500 plus recipes for my first book, right? So in that small town where there were no big brands, no online shopping at the time, what I really saw was that my mom doing all those, kitchen and DIY Ayurveda hacks that, to nourish her skin. And that's how my book happened. So my small town is, indeed very small, but it taught me a hell lot of things. And then I moved to New Delhi in 2010. It's already been 10 years, right? So my audience is actually a lot in the US as well, which is why when my first book came out, I visited the US and introduced like a whole bunch of people to my book.
And then how did you break into the beauty industry, or like what was the inspiration from that? Like was it aspirational, or was it something that you kind of like fell in love with? I know you just told us a story about the recipes, but also what was the story behind the recipes themselves?
So, it was entirely need based what was happening, with me and my hometown. It was need based that we needed those things to, sort of improve our skin quality, right? So, that's how I've always thought that maybe we could bottle this thing up and, sell it as products, or, I've always had a plan for that. So when I moved out, and then I studied in college, and then I got into journalism. What I used to write a lot about was wellness and beauty, and those articles used to do very well on the web. They used to get the highest number of hits in all of my team, right? So when I decided to write a book, then that's when I quit my job as the head of Cosmopolitan Digital in India, and that's when I decided to write a book. And I was like, I'm going to use all my knowledge, from my hometown and my teenage days, and maybe make a book out of it, and just share the wisdom and the quality and the knowledge that comes with being in a place where you had to actually invent something to match up to what's happening in the world, and what other people already have access to. So that's how the interest in beauty happened anyhow. But then from those natural methods, I was working at Cosmo. I was in touch with national and international people who are in the beauty space, and I got to interact with, I had like a 360-degree sort of view of what's happening in the beauty industry. Let's say if it's clinical or natural or dermalogical, basically all kinds of aspects that are related to beauty. I was exposed to all of that, so it sort of broadened my horizons.
There's a really great stat. They said almost 2/3 of consumers are self-proclaimed belief-driven buyers. And it's from a 2020 study. And, when you talk about incorporating, your culture and traditions and things passed from generationally, from your mom, perhaps even your grandmother, people really can relate with that. And I think that Gen Z, millennial consumers, they want something, very organic and holistic. And I think that this, we're talking a lot about clean beauty. And I love that you've tapped into all of those things, and it's very personal for you.
Yeah, actually, now clean beauty is a buzzword, right? Back then, it was just like do what you can to, make your skin better, because back then we weren't worried whether it was clean or, it had preservatives. It didn't, because it was, all natural kitchen sort of ingredients, right? But now that it's marketed as clean beauty, I think that, yeah, what we were doing back then, those many years ago, was actually something that's sort of in right now. But back then, we didn't care about that being, something that's like a buzzword or something that's in trend. We were just doing it because that's what was available to us. So now, when we look back and see that, yeah, we actually, I gave my inputs to this article on Women's Health magazine in the US, and they asked me, why does India have an authority on all things clean beauty? And that is exactly what my answer was, that we actually unintentionally were practicing clean beauty when, when we weren't having access to anything else. So it was accidental, but it was futuristic, and it was totally like, you know, life has come full circle now. We went from clean beauty, then all the brands happened, the online delivery began, and then we are back to clean beauty, right? So it was like, okay, yeah, this is something, we've done before. And maybe because of Ayurveda and wellness, India and South Asia may have some authority on, on the clean beauty department.
How has your global point of view helped you to champion a voice for multicultural beauty and inclusivity, just making sure that everyone's represented and championing a community of people that, also participate in the beauty space but aren't often recognized.
So, I love how brands are more inclusive now. And, this earlier it was all about tokenism, right? You would see a few brown and black models with a few white models, and you could clearly see through it that it's happening just for the sake of, doing it, right? That's when people started calling out that, this is not going to work. Like, I'm a person of color myself, and I've seen it that, that this has happened for a long time and it still happens sometimes. But now that brands are being more mindful about this kind of stuff, we could see some real effort happening in the industry. And, a lot of times, people would say that this is just for show, or, that this is happening just to represent wokeism or something like that. But I think that there's a huge incentive involved in being inclusive, because your brand has to represent the world, right? And the world has all kinds of people. So, I mean, it's not just logical, practical, and profitable, but it's also yes, it's ethical for sure to, represent each and every one of your customers, right? But now that it's, people are being more mindful about their the campaigns, and, how they sort of design these marketing campaigns. I think it's not just logical, but that's something which is profitable and good for them as well, right? Because if you represent a whole bunch of people, then the whole bunch of people come to you to buy your product. By doing that, everyone wins, right? Then when all of us win, because we see that, people like us in those campaigns, and those campaigns cater to people like us. So, I don't understand why a brand wouldn't, get into this.
There's a great article from Vogue Business. It's How Gen Z is Changing Beauty, and they reference a survey from Bliss of Y+, and they go into, in the US, Gen Z is the most ethically and racially diverse generation to date. Inclusion and diversity is core to who they are, the report notes, and some 79% of Gen Z surveyed by Y+ agree that brands that create products for the skin have a responsibility to represent all colors and tones. And, it just says how far we've come.
Totally, because, back then, yeah, I've even heard that, some brands in Australia weren't making enough shades. And that is, every now and then there's some country where this sort of a problem arises. And, there are so many watchdog pages that point these things out. And basically, sometimes they cancel people unnecessarily. But the good thing about such pages is that they keep, these brands really in check, so that, they're not posting anything offensive and they're having enough shades. And Gen Z, for that matter, is very, very mindful. It comes after the Millennial generation, which again, Millennials are very mindful. They are very cause driven. They want to, put, ethical and moral sort of values over, financial and, commercial gains, right? So it is also, the generation after Millennials, Gen Z, this is what we inspired them, and then they came up as, an even better version of a generation. So, I like where this is going. I like how we are mindful and the next generation is even more mindful. And if you're not going to take it that, this foundation does not make enough shades, or let's say sometimes we also feel like, okay, I am investing in a brand that does not do animal testing, but then that brand gets acquired by another brand that is not sort of leaping bunny certified, or let's say is yet to get on the cruelty free bandwagon, right? So many things we have to think about before making a purchase, which wasn't the case so many years ago, because people didn't have that much exposure or knowledge to even know what they're investing in. But right now, even though if a brand is making the exact shade of the foundation as your skin, you might take a step back saying, okay, but their ethical values don't align with mine. So this is what Gen Z and millennials are about. We would really take a step back and really assess if a brand is really aligning with our values. And I think that's it takes a big heart to do that.
Yeah, we're going way beyond just, we want to know what the ingredients are. We want to understand, what's going into this product, what are the commitments of the brand. It's not just the label.
True. And back then, these kinds of information were not public, right? So right now I see brands posting about, here are cruelty-free alternatives of your favorite brands, right? So there are those pages who are saying, don't buy this, because it's the same thing, plus you are doing some good. So why wouldn't they, go for the nicer one, right? And the more ethical one. So brands have to work around it, because they have like a tough road ahead of them if they don't just sort of adjust to the expectations of their customers.
Speaking of brands, I kind of want to circle back to just kind of your entrepreneurial mindset, because that's what we champion here on Creators with Influence. And I know that early on you spoke about, wanting to bottle and sell these products, but then also you've established yourself online and then creating a community offline as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that transition from growing on social media, then utilizing that network to now build your empire, essentially, or your legacy, I should say?
I was a digital writer at Cosmo, right? Then I became the head of the department, because I was doing the kind of work that performed the best on the web. I was strategizing really well. So I knew that those were sort of my strong fortes, right? So I knew that I was good at digital. I knew what sold on digital, and I know how to what time do I use to push what kind of content, right? Because Cosmopolitan had fashion, we had beauty, we had relationships. So it was a really diverse platform, and I knew what kind of stories to push around what time to, gain like significant number of views, and whatever targets we had, I always overshot it. So and that's how I knew that this is what the expectation is of people who are, let's say, 18 to 34 years of age. And I knew that is exactly the kind of following that I was building on my platform. So I just used that that knowledge, that sort of natural knack for knowing what's being intuitive about digital stuff. So I really use that knowledge to build my Instagram presence. And when I thought that I am in a comfortable place to go out on my own and explore what I can do by myself, I was like, okay, I know that I'm good at beauty and wellness. I know I have a history of using natural kitchen products that that my whole teenage was about. And I was like, now let's club the two things and get a book out of it. So that's when I wrote the book, and I co-created and co-formulated 500 plus recipes with my mom. And that's when the book came out, and it did really well. and it was endorsed by Bobby Brown and UN Global Ambassador and actor Dia Mirza and India's biggest chef Sanjeev Kapoor. There were a couple of more people. So, the book was also diverse in that sense, aside from my 500 plus tips. So, I added the poster people of, beauty industry and beauty mogul, chef, because, beauty is all about, from the inside out, right? So I made sure that I had a chef recommending something from the inside, to repair the inside too. So all of that happened, and the book happened, and I came to the US to sort of.
But tell people what the name of the book is. You got to get that book name out so our listeners can find it.
Roots to Radiance, yeah. Do you guys like the title? Because I get a lot of compliments about how amazing the title was.
I mean, I love the title. I love your tagline, wholesome beauty solutions for the millennial life. It's spot on.
Because, I put like special few, I think 75 recipes just for, under 3 minutes, that you can do under 3 minutes. Because I said, this is for millennials. Millennials don't have time, and I have to do something that's, like less time consuming. So there was another section altogether that, millennials really appreciated.
And the book just came out in 2019. It's still fairly recent.
And good thing I came to the US, and talked about it, because right after I was back, 3 months later, the pandemic started. And that's when my book, kept doing consistently well, because nobody could step outside, and all they were left with is, kitchen hacks, right? All the kitchen DIY. So no salon, nothing, and people just, buying my book and doing those things for their hair and skin and body. Because pandemic was horrible, but my book really helped people. So it was consistently #1 on Amazon every other day.
What did you discover about the book writing process? Because I know a lot of creators are starting to get into ebooks, and that's a great way to add a new revenue stream. What kind of tips do you have for creators who are trying to explore that option?
So writing a book is no joke, let's start with that, because it's very, very tough. Like, you could jot down all your thoughts, you've had in a month, and you'd realize you've only written 2 pages or 3 pages, and you'd be like, oh my god, I'm all spent, and I've written 2 pages, right? So unless you have like a hell lot of thoughts, don't think about writing a book, because then it would be like, then you'll be like, I'm all spent, like it's maxed out, and it's nowhere close to, like, it's like a pamphlet, right? So you really, if you can, aim for 10 chapters at least, and that's when you could write a book. But again, writing a book has a lot to do with passion. Now, I know I could write it because I was writing 5 articles in a day for my website, right? So I was like, even if I use 50% of that talent and energy, I should be able to write a book in 3 to 4 months, right? But for someone who's not in the habit of writing 5 articles for like a major publication, then it's gonna take a lot of more time, because then you just want to be at ease, and sometimes you're not feeling creative enough, you're not having good thoughts. So you always have to have some buffer time for that as well, because you won't feel like doing it every day, right? So see where your sort of strengths are, and make enough room for unwillingness, because you're not gonna be good at what you do every day, right? So, and then mix that with some research, because books need a lot of research. It has to be factually correct, and sort of reason with the reader and things like that. So when you club all of that, you could have a decent book, and then the editor's gonna sort of dismantle all of it, and you might have to do a hell lot of work again. but that's just how writing a book works, right? So it could be frustrating, but when the book comes out and you hold the first copy in your hands, and that's when you know that it's all paid off, and that you've done a good job.
Well, I know you said that you probably shouldn't start a book if you're not a writer, or it's probably one of the toughest things to do, but somehow you've managed to do multiple things throughout your career. So one of those things was co-creating a hair care range with Envia, which is all about conscious, healthy, and eco-friendly living. Can you tell us a bit about the product development process, and also how you even choose to partner with brands? Like, what is that like?
Yeah, so when I did this scalp anti-aging with Anvea, it's a very new concept because you don't see a lot of people talking about anti-aging for the scalp, right? And it's a very big issue because a lot of people suffer with premature balding, and the weird thing about this is you don't really realize you're balding until 50% of your hair is already lost, right? So I knew that there's a market for this, and we knew that the monsoon season was approaching in India, and that's when people complain a lot about hair loss. So as I knew that, as a digital head at Cosmo, I knew what kind of content to push out at what time. In this context, I knew what kind of product to push out when, right? So I knew that monsoon season is approaching, and then we have to, sort of get like a few sort of ingredients from outside India, and the pandemic was very much fresh at the time. So it was very difficult to pull that off because I wanted to see like a certain hydrant from Switzerland worked with my formula, and we had to import it that very same week because we had a deadline for the launch, and there were so many things going on that front because there are so many products that claim to help with hair loss and things like that, but not enough of them were using certified products, like products and ingredients that were involved in clinical researches, result oriented products. They were not there, and I mean that in the sense that in India and in the US. So even in the international market, the kind of product that I have developed did not exist. So we just sent it to Christine Chang of Glow Recipe. We sent it to Tata Harper. We sent it to Bobby Brown, and all of them loved it. Now Tata Harper is actually someone who makes $200 face cleansers, right? So I've seen people save up for Tata Harper, just to buy her face washes because they are so luxe and they're so, sort of high end and luxurious and feel good, right? So it really meant a lot to me that the first product I ever created, she bought 5 more bottles of what we had sent her, and she was like, I'm in love with this. And that's how, it was really reassuring for me that all that knowledge that I've put into, my writing and then my book and now my products, I'm not sort of just doing things for the heck of it. I'm actually doing something that beauty moguls are using in their everyday life. So, I think that's very important. Research is very important because I may have tried like 50 products in the US and in India to just see where the gap was, and why some products were just pretending to be treatment while they were just scented silicones that untangled your hair and made them feel smoother. But there's a difference between feeling and a product working on you. Feeling is just sensory, and working on you, sort of is more result oriented and like a more long term solution. So I always go for the long term things, and that is how basically I choose my projects. That I'm not just going to do something just for the heck of it, or just to add another title to the list of titles I've had. And I think that is very important, because that's how you build up trust, and how you get people to see you seriously.
I want to just talk about trust because, consumer trust for young creators and getting creators to understand that if you want to have a long-term career, that's foundational. Truth in advertising, building that, establishing a foundation that consumers can come back to you, that you're not in it for this quick win. And it's that legacy that you were just talking about.
Totally, yeah. Because there's a whole world of gimmicks out there, and there are things that instantly pique your interest, and you buy it, and it disappoints you, right? Because gimmicks are designed in a way that you impulse buy them, but there's no sort of you're not going to buy it again. They sort of, I'm pretty sure they even count on their one time purchases, right? That we don't care that if a person comes back again, we've made the sale now, let's move on to fooling the next customer, right? So I think a lot of profits were made in that way. But there are other brands in the circuit that believe in slow growth, but they want a steady growth, and they want to form like a cult where people, where their customers defend them if something wrong happens. Like, there are so many times a brand makes one mistake and they get dragged for it, but because they're so good at what they do, their followers and customers come to their rescue and say, so what, they did one thing wrong, but they did so many things right. So you have to have that edge with your consumers, that, as a human, as a brand, you're bound to make mistakes, but just make sure to do enough good that, that you're able to survive whatever is coming for you, right? So, the pandemic could happen, some mistake in marketing, some controversy might happen, but these things will happen to, I think it will happen to each one of us, but what's going to save you is the good that you do. And there are a lot of brands that are focusing on creating a community and not just a customer base. So it's the community that's going to be profitable for you, and sort of save you when the time comes, and put their trust in you, and those are the people who are going to market you with their word of mouth. So all of those things, I think, are the pillar to building a steady brand and a trustworthy brand.
I believe personally that like looking good is feeling good, and feeling good is looking good. I feel like those two are intertwined. So 2 questions for you is, how do you think the beauty space affects mental health? And then also, how has COVID affected the beauty space?
Oh, that's a really good question, actually, because lipstick sales were down because of the mask, but skincare sales were up because people had the time to take care of themselves, right? So the pandemic has really made us rethink beauty in a way that we've never seen it before. Because earlier we used to have 5 weekdays where we have to wear makeup, we can't put on face masks, we are exposed to the sun. And now it's like you have 7 days for your, self-care, right? Earlier, from 2 days to 7 days is a big jump, right? And we have the time, we have the patience. We could just work with a face mask on and no one's going to know it, because we are literally working from homes, right? So I think that had a big role to play, because that's when people realized that, oh, if I had more time on my hands, and if I had more inclination, my skin would look like this. And once they've tasted what good skin feels like, they don't want to let go. They don't want to go back to work, and they don't want to have, like in office desk anymore, because everyone wants to stay home. And now that they've experienced how good it is, people don't want to have it any other way. And that has sort of really, made brands to rethink how to market their makeup and skincare, because skincare had a good year, and people really, were inclined to buying it more than makeup, especially lipsticks, right? Because earlier I used to get a lot of questions saying which is the best concealer, and now that you don't have to wear a concealer, people ask me what's the best under eye treatment, right? So the questions that I used to get as an educator, as a beauty guru, it was very interesting for me to see that, earlier people just wanted to do the superficial thing and move on, but now they actually want to work for the betterment of their skin, which is so much better. Having no under eye pigmentation is better than 1,000 concealers that you can buy. And now I saw them approaching to their problems from a wellness standpoint rather than superficial beauty, short lived and quick fix sort of a solution. So I think this has a lot to do with mental health as well, because when you see improvements in your body, you actually realize and are inclined to sort of dive more into it. Like, let's say you've lost like a few kilos, that's when you would definitely not break a fast or, sort of indulge in mindless binging, because now you've tasted what fit feels like, right? So that is how it happens in the skincare space as well. Now that you know that you are so good at, when your skin can glow naturally like that, you are, you want to hold that tight, and you don't want to let go of that experience, and you don't want to have 5 work days anymore. So I think, the pandemic has changed a lot of things in a way that we've never seen them before. And beauty and wellness is one. Like my mentor Bobby Brown always says that a very interesting change is happening right now. And she said that in 2019, by the way before the pandemic, that beauty and wellness are coming together. And years from now, you won't be able to distinguish between the two, because that's how even the clean beauty movement started, right? That people wanted to be clean, and clean, goes back to wellness. So I think the both things are just connected now, and in the years to come, as she rightly says, those things are going to be one thing.
I want to just get into technology. The beauty space is really thriving on so many different exciting AR makeup try-on tools with Pinterest. You have Ulta Beauty skin analysis with AI. I know you've mentioned Bobby Brown a couple of times. She has our artistry like never before. Instagram and Snapchat lenses, AR filters, TikTok enhance. There's so many exciting things happening in this space. What kind of digital tech transformations are on your radar?
So, apart from the things you just mentioned, there are so many of these, devices, right, that we are using these days. And I don't know, I can't vouch for their efficacy. Sometimes it's also gimmicky, but a lot of things like, filters and stuff, I have no problem with them, by the way, because I think it's just up to you to make, it's your duty to make yourself feel good. So I don't care about, if other people are restricting you, or, are trying to say that, ditch the filters. But I think one should just do what's good for them, because in a way, if you're saying, ditch the filters, live life in a certain way, you do it. Why should I do it, right? Because I should do what makes me happy and you should do what makes you happy. And in a challenging year, like, like we've had like a couple of challenging years, right? So I don't think anybody can tell you what you should and shouldn't do, because we've all had enough of these instruction manuals in our lives. And I think it's really time to break free and use get into whatever makes you happy. So I'm actually very happy that beauty and tech are also sort of aligning these days. There are so many sort of jade rollers and facial lasers devices, and I think there's like LED sort of facial masks as well. So I think all of that is very exciting, and I just want to get to a point where I could see the efficacy of those things. And if they work, why not? If they work for you, you should definitely go for it. So my view on those things is that if it's working for you, if it's right for you, just go ahead. Like, don't overthink it.
I want to ask, what is your blueprint to success if you were speaking to emerging creators? Because you spoke about the passion needed to drive, your endeavors, but then also some of the inventions that were created because of necessity. So if you're speaking to an emerging creator, what are, some tips, or what is the blueprint, the Nikita blueprint to success?
Oh, that's such a profound question. Like, if I could just sum it up in a very practical way, I would just say that whichever industry you choose, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of competition, because beauty itself, I think there are 10,000 new brands every day. I don't know, but it certainly seems like it. So if you're doing, just don't get into a bandwagon of something, because that's when you won't be able to stand out. Look to solve a problem in a way that that it doesn't require extra effort, right? That let's say you, and coming from experience is something I've seen working for a lot of people. Like, a lot of people said that my family or me or my mother, whatever, experienced so and so, and since there was nothing and I saw so much suffering in the world because of the same reason, I created something. I think when you lead with stories like that, you are bound to be trusted more, because you lead with experience, and you've come up with something that wasn't already there. Like, I made anti-aging for scalp because I was experiencing hair loss, and even more so after COVID. So I think solving a problem is very important. Having a story where people buy into why you made a certain product, or why did you get into a certain space. So have a good story, solve a problem, look towards building a community, and not like aggressive, profit minded, gimmicky strategies. Just throw all of that out and just focus on really bringing the world together with a shared problem that you have solved.
Earlier, you mentioned that you had a mentor in Bobby Brown, and typically I like to ask the question of like what you would tell your younger self, like what's some of the advice you would tell your younger self. But is there a space that an emerging beauty creator that has, a very like meager upbringing can apply to and enter the space? Or is there any other suggestions about like mentorship programs or anything like that you'd like to mention?
I actually, so many of these makeup artists, and I think Yale and Harvard even did something on mentoring young people on how to. I actually took that course, by the way, on how to the science of well-being, and I'm sure the internet is full of mentors, but the real question here is that you have to choose your mentor, because there are so many people trying to teach you something and get you to be there. sort of disciples or something, right? But it's very important for you to, choose the right path when you are in that formative stage, because, these things, they sort of make you who you are. And with the wrong mentor, anything could go bad. Like, not just bad mentor, even if you have a bad boss, let's say. So I think, these things really do a number on you. And, that's when that's what makes you really scared of people, of who you look up to, because you're so scarred from a bad boss or a bad mentor, that you think that the next person, you already sort of have like a emotional psychological block towards things, right? So I think there are so many entrepreneurs giving advice on social media, and it really irritates me sometimes, because I don't think a lot of people are even qualified to do that. And I just read this the other day in like a quote or a meme, that don't take constructive criticism from people who haven't constructed anything. And I think it's very important to sort of assess if your mentor has created something you would like to create. Like I say, Bobby Brown, she's like the queen of beauty, queen of everything actually. Because I see her as someone, you cannot walk a single block without seeing something that she has made, right? So that's a mentor I can get behind. That's someone who supports women, someone who gets women and tries to sort of cater to their needs and creates a revolutionary brand around looking natural, because she's the queen of natural makeup, right? So it's very important to choose your mentor and see what they've done, if your ideas align, because a lot of people will give you a lot of advice on the internet, and it's very easy to get confused.
I 100% agree. We started
you.
the Career Creator Club, and it's Fortune 500 executives who have an incredible pedigree and resume, because you want to have people who have mastered their roles and are industry leaders. That's very important. So you're spot on. But you've spent a lot of time with us, and we want to thank you. It's been a real pleasure to get to know you a little bit more. We've been Instagram friends for a while, so it's been nice to get this quality time with you on Creators with Influence. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for asking such beautiful questions, because I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I think we really created something that could help young creators and young entrepreneurs, because we've talked about a lot of critical stuff here.
So yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on Creators with Influence. And how can our listeners find you? What are your channels? Where can they get the book?
So you can get the book on Amazon, and you can find me on Instagram, obviously, at Nikita Upadhyay, NikitaUpadhyay.
Creators with Influence is produced by the American Influencer Council, the sole 501c6 not-for-profit trade association in the U.S. created by and for career creators.